My name is Shadia Silliman. I'm a student of the College of Arts and Sciences. I'm a gender studies and psychology double major, and this is my honors thesis. And it's called The Infantilization of Female Sexuality. So before we begin, just a quick warning. This contains sensitive material. None of the images are pornographic or illegal, but they are of children in sexualized clothing, some of them. And so if you're uncomfortable with that, please, you feel free to leave. I will not judge you. I will not be offended. This is a safe area. My other thing is, and unfortunately she's stuck on the slide with this, Dr. Mala Madison. I have to thank her for being my thesis advisor. She's absolutely amazing. She couldn't be here because she's teaching a class, but she's my savior in this situation. So what is the infantilization of female sexuality is the question I get most often. And it sounds made up. People tell me I made it up, but it exists, and you already know what it is. It's this. So many of you probably recognize these images. This is from the TLC show Toddlers and Tiaras. And this show, for those of you who haven't seen it, is about beauty pageants for children. And it's come under a lot of fire because people see it a lot as sexualizing children. And as you can see, these photos, they sort of tread a line for how people think of children's sexuality. So the show came under a lot of fire, especially last year when two girls were dressed like this. One as Julia Roberts' character from from Pretty Woman. She's a prostitute in that movie. And then one as Madonna. So you can see their ages are 3 and 2. And this girl was actually removed from her family, the one dressed up as Madonna. I'm not sure what happened with that, but there was a custody dispute because people believe that she was in an unsafe environment. So this does not just happen on shows like Toddlers and Tiaras. When I started looking around, I realized it was happening all over the place. These are just 3 ads that I saw recently. 2 of them are for perfume. For whatever reason, that happens a lot. And you can see that these are grown women who are being treated like children, and it's also being sexualized at the same time. And here are some products that have come out recently. Here's the Abercrombie & Fitch push-up bikini top for girls from ages 7 to 14. They got in a lot of trouble for that, and they ended up changing the age on it until about 14, I believe. There's a Walmart Juniors panty that says, "Who needs credit cards?" Or how about waxing for girls 15 and younger? And so I got my inspiration when I was watching my favorite documentary, Killing Us Softly, and Gene Kilborn said, "Women are told that it's sexy to be like a little girl, and grown women are infantilized in many ways throughout advertising, fashion, and the popular culture in general. So we often get grown women dressed like children or acting like children in one way or another. Now the flip side is the increasing sexualization of little girls. So this is not just happening on shows like Toddlers and Tiaras, this is happening all over the place. So let's break down this nebulous title that I have, Infantilization of Female Sexuality. Infantilization is the portrayal of adults acting and looking childish. Sexualization, as defined by the APA, is when sexuality is inappropriately imposed upon a person. So when you put these 2 things together, it's when you are imposing sexuality on children or when you are making someone look young and sexy at the same time. So basically, I call it IFS because I got really tired of typing it after about 3 pages. IFS implies that women are sexiest when they are children. This is the basic concept. The sexiest that a woman can be is when she is childish. Here's some really interesting pictures from French Vogue in 2011. This girl's 6 years old. Now, our society has not always included the sexualization of children to the degree that it does now. In history, in our American history, it wasn't really until Lolita came out in 1955 that it started emerging the way it has. And there are some theorists, Gigi Durham, for example, she believes that the book Lolita was the origin for all of this happening. She believes once the book came out, it put this sexy little girl into our culture. So this came out in 1955. And here's something interesting. The 50th anniversary version has this cover. So I thought that was sort of telling. So in 1959, we have Just Like Mommy's Bra and Panty Set, which was sort of a rarity at the time. But then as we move into the 70s, we start seeing a lot more portrayals of female sexuality. A really famous one is Brooke Shields was in the movie Pretty Baby. She was 12 and she played a prostitute. And she actually had nude scenes in the movie. So she was prepubescent, but she had nude scenes. So then as we continue to move forward, we have it's growing. These images are growing. In 1979, Love's Baby Soft, because innocence is sexier than you think. That one's really notorious. In the 90s, this whole idea of heroin chic got famous, which is we want all these women to look young and sort of gaunt, like they're strung out on drugs, basically, and we want them to look childish. We want everyone to look childish and tiny. So Kate Moss, of course, in 1993 got really famous for this ad campaign with Calvin Klein. Again, Calvin Klein, that's in 1995 at the top. That's another one of his ad campaigns. That one was actually banned because it was viewed by the government as child pornography. And then in 1996, I think this is a really interesting landmark, is the murder of JonBenet Ramsey. And if anyone remembers, I remember it being a huge deal when I was a kid. JonBenet Ramsey lived in Colorado, and she was a child beauty pageant star, and her death involved sexual violence, and it sort of drew everyone's attention to the world of beauty pageants for the first time for children. And then here's what we have today. Obviously, it's escalated to an entirely new level. This ad at the top is a Lee Jeans ad from 2006. It was actually called the Lolita campaign. And I don't know about any of you, but this picture makes me really uncomfortable because it's supposed to mimic child pornography. And then this picture on the bottom is from the TV show Dance Moms, which is extremely similar to Toddlers and Tiaras because Toddlers and Tiaras has been very successful. They've been mimicking it. On this episode of the show, which ended up being pulled, they told the little girls to dress like burlesque dancers. They had nude tops that made them look as though they weren't wearing shirts, and they were told to dance as though a man couldn't afford them. That episode did not end up airing. So I had a hard time finding a lot of quantitative evidence for why this happens, but I did find one really good study by O'Donoghue, Gold, and McKay. It's in 1997, so it's a little bit dated, and it recorded occurrences of child sexualization in 5 magazines, and it went across 4 decades. So here's basically their findings. 1, girls were consistently sexualized more than boys, and this is something that studies have always found in the history of American advertising and media. Women are always sexualized more than men. Sexualization of children was slightly increasing. So when it came to children, images of them being sexualized was definitely increasing over the 40-year span. And then if you put these 2 pieces of information together, the fact that girls are sexualized more than boys, young girls, and then that this sexualization was increasing, you can see that the sexualization of young girls in particular was increasing in our society. And the study indicates that it's still increasing, and they predicted it would increase, and I think they're correct about that. So every now and then people ask me, what about the sexualization of boys? And it's true, sexualization of boys happens, but it's extremely different from the sexualization of girls. And one of the big things is that it's tied to themes of dominance and aggression. We see little boys as dominant and powerful. We have chick magnet, pimp squad, things like that. From a young age, boys are trained to be dominant in our society and masculine, aggressive. A really great comparison is in 1996, these 2 ads actually went together. They're Calvin Klein. And this is a beautiful representation of the difference between advertising of little boys and little girls. On the left, the little boy is dominant, he's speaking, he's got a confident posture. And on the right, the little girl is passive, she's pulled into herself, she looks like she doesn't really want to speak or engage with anyone. And that's pretty much the difference between advertising girls and boys in our media. Of course, Justin Bieber, he's a really good example. He's been very sexualized in our media, except he's sexualized as being a sort of lady killer. Women love him, women chase him. He's very dominant. And then you have Jaden Smith, Will Smith's son. On this show, you know, he's being praised for having great ab muscles at the age of 11. So my question in my thesis is, why is this infantilization happening? Because obviously we're seeing a huge spike in our culture. So to sort of back up, I want to talk about the backlash theory. This is a very popular feminist theory. So I'm going to give you a feminist movements crash course real quick. Patriarchy. In order to understand this, you have to understand patriarchy. And basically what that means is that we live in a society that prefers men. And this is not the work of men, it's not the work of women, it just so happens that we have a hierarchy that prefers men. This is why we need feminist movements, with second-wave feminism and third-wave feminism. And both movements improve the status of women in society. It helped women break through the patriarchy. However, this theory says that society has backlashed against this progress by punishing women. And one of the ways is by media sexualization. So The big proponent of this theory is Susan Faludi, who I love. She wrote Backlash in 1991, and she said, as women gain more rights, the backlash finds a way to defeat those rights. An example she gives is that in 1980, there was a lot of discussion about how women were voting more than ever in the United States. But she says the backlash made it so that the Reagan administration sort of shunted women off of political platforms. And she has a quote here, which is, "The truth is that the last decade," which would have been the 80s, "has seen a powerful counter-assault on women's rights, a backlash, an attempt to retract the handful of small and hard-won victories that the feminist movement did manage for women." So even though we're making progress, there's still a way that patriarchy is getting rid of it. And then, of course, Naomi Wolf, she has The Beauty Myth, another book I love, and she gives a variation on the backlash. And she says that as women gain more power in our society, we punish them with beauty standards that they can never live up to. We confine women with an increasing standards of attractiveness. So as women started getting more power, they breached the power structure from 1980s to 1990s. Eating disorders increased exponentially among women, and cosmetic surgeries became the fastest growing medical specialty in the United States. And she says, the more legal and material hindrances women have broken through, the more strictly and heavily and cruelly images of female beauty have come to weigh down upon us. So something I noticed here was a parallel. We're making young girls look older and sexy, this girl's 10, and then we're making adult women look young and sexy. We're reaching towards this middle ground, and I asked, where are we going? What is this ideal that we're looking for? What's the perfect medium? And the answer that I found was the perfect woman. So females are being pushed into this space between girlhood and womanhood. And this space it's happening because of the backlash. And in this space is that perfect woman. And she's perfect for the patriarchy. She's not perfect probably for any of us in here. And you'll find out why. And I'm also not saying that she's the ideal woman for the majority of men, because I don't think that's true. So here's the qualities of the perfect woman. Feminism gave women a voice. Patriarchy does not like the fact that feminism gave women a voice, so it's going to take that voice from them. So, when women have a voice, they can say things like, I don't want to have sex. I need consent. You need consent before you have sex with me. I want contraception. The perfect woman can't do any of those things. Patriarchy makes sure that she can't say anything. She's just old enough to have sex because she's adult, but she's too young to really know what she's doing because she's a child. How about her sexuality? In our culture, we have always prescribed to the virgin-whore double bind. Women are either virgins or they're whores. They're either completely pure or completely dirty. And the double bind we have now, the perfect woman, she has to be both. She has to be a virgin, but she also has to be sexually experienced enough for it to be a really good experience for her male partner. So she's sort of like this dream, In our society, virginity is like a really big deal. It's a big deal for men to claim virginity, or for really anyone to claim, but especially men to claim virginity of their partners. And so if you can say you claimed her virginity, but you had a good sexual experience at the same time, which is almost impossible, then, then you have a perfect woman. She's non-threatening. She does not threaten men. Something I love to talk about is the medicalization of the female body. Patriarchy has told us, around the turn of the century when medicalization started happening, we started saying that women's bodies, there's something wrong with them. The male body is okay. The female body is symptomatic. And things like menstruation, pregnancy, they're gross, they're weird. And so women's bodily functions are generally interpreted by patriarchy as gross. Perfect woman doesn't menstruate. She's too young because she's a child. She can't get pregnant, so a man doesn't have to worry about wearing a condom or pulling out when he's having sex. He doesn't have to compromise his sexual experience because she's not old enough to actually, or not mature enough to actually get pregnant. Another interesting thing is body hair. In our society, body hair is disgusting on women. For whatever reason, that's evolved, and there's some theories that say that it's because it represents womanhood. A woman is really a woman when she has bodily hair. She hits puberty, she gets pubic hair and underarm hair, and we tell her to get rid of that. We want her to be more of a child. We want to take her womanhood from her. So Deborah Merskin sort of sums this up, and she says, the message from advertisers and the mass media to girls, as eventual women, is they should always be sexually available, always have sex on their minds, be willing to be dominated and even sexually aggressed against, and they should be gazed upon as sexual objects. So what we're saying is we're training young girls to be this perfect woman. Advertising and the media, they're telling little girls that when you grow up, you want to be sexually submissive. You don't want body hair. You want to be like a child. You don't want to embrace any of the things that feminism fought for. So And once again, here's one of the little 6-year-old girls from French Vogue. So sort of tying everything together. So the perfect woman is being reduced to this narrower and narrower standard. Every year that goes by, we're putting more qualities on her. She has to be thinner, she has to be prettier, she has to have this and that. But no woman can ever fulfill this, so women will always fail no matter what. Failure is inevitable. And all of this is a reprisal for the success of feminism. It's happening as a backlash to the progress that women have made. Unfortunately, this is a hard problem to solve, but I didn't want to leave without giving some sort of remedy of some kind or a positive aspect. So what I will say is that if you do want to do something about it, don't watch Toddlers and Tiaras. People tell me it's disgusting. I've never spoken to a person who says, I love it, but it still has a huge rating. So even if it's a train wreck and you watch it because it's disgusting, maybe don't watch it. Don't purchase women's magazines that reduce women to childhood, that reduce women to their sexuality. That's magazines like Cosmopolitan. Don't watch these shows, you know. And if you see a company that is running a pair of thong panties for 6-year-olds, which happens sometimes, write a letter, do something, say this is inappropriate, and they'll end up pulling it, hopefully. And that's it.